You are listening to the Good Girl Podcast. The Good Girl Podcast is a space where we deconstruct good femininity. For me, good femininity is this idea that you have to be a certain type of woman, a certain type of girl to be successful in any domain, whether it is spiritually, whether it is in your relationships, whether it is on your job. Oftentimes, society prescribes these definitions of what it means to be good, and they connect that to your success. So we have conversations on here to tell you that ain't true. That ain't it. And we do that by way of confessions. I also call them uncomfortable truths. But sometimes we have conversations that also unpack some of that help us realize that we ain't crazy, y'all. We are not crazy. And so we're going to have one of those conversations today. I'm so excited because I love when the men come on, right? I'm going to say the men that got sense. I love when they come on. And so I'm excited to bring, some of you guys know him because he's been on before. I'm excited to bring my bison homie, Jay Hall, back to the Good Girl Podcast. What up, though?
What up, though? Cameo, what up, though?
I know, I feel like I said that too proper. I was like, what up, though? Because I said it. I was trying to articulate. It's what up, though.
It does have different variations, though. It does. And you know that.
Okay. I do. So welcome to the Good Girl Podcast. If you guys don't know, Jay Hall, he is a writer, a journalist, and a podcaster. He's a journalist for the AURN network. And he's the podcaster of the History of Being Black podcast. So excited to have you on, excited about this conversation. Everything good in the hood. I also heard that when I was asking Jay Hall about an accurate description, he told me he's also a lover of Popeye's biscuits. Is that true?
Yeah, I still got love for him, even though I haven't purchased a Popeye biscuit in some time because I just appreciate my health a little bit more these days. But I still got love when I drive past it. I give it the signal, You
do? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Most definitely.
I feel you. So I'm excited about this conversation. We're going to hop right into it. And this was actually a tweet. I'm going to read the tweet that I sent Jay Hall. I saw it. I said, we're going to have a conversation about this. So let me find it. Because I think it's important. I'm going to set it up a little bit. In the midst of all the relationship conversations that we've had, I think it's important to have conversations that are uncomfortable about ourselves, right? Because I know there's some uncomfortable conversations that we as women need to have. I think there are some uncomfortable conversations that men need to have as well, and essentially owning their stuff. I wonder what stuff, maybe that's another sidebar conversation, Jay Hall, but I wonder what stuff we need to own a little bit more, right? I wonder. I'm squaring my eyes. And before I hop into yours, maybe I don't want to put you on the spot like this, but I am. Do you think there? And I'll be quiet. I won't push back. Are there areas that you think women can own more or be more accountable in who they are? And I know we're not generalizing, but maybe some things that you see.
First of all, thank you for having me back. You the homie. I appreciate your work that I always watch from afar. I'm a big fan of you as a person, and I've been loving our build. So, you having me back on here is a privilege. And so I just want to say thank you so much. And, Cameo's being very humble. She was one of the first guests when I became History of Being Black new host. She was like one of the first ones when I reached out to. She was like, I got you, homie. And she held it down. So got to take time to give you that off top.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do. As far as are there spaces or places where women can be accountable? Anything for me, I've always went by the philosophy that anything that's consensual, where there's a understanding, there's always going to be a level of accountability that both parties have to take. Always. It's never a time where there's zero accountability. It's just impossible. It may be just a slight percentage, like 8% or whatever your metric is, but there's never a time, if it's consensual, I say, will both parties walk away zero? And I tell my man that same thing when we have that conversation amongst us and they calm and their emotions out of place. I'm like, well, there was a part where X, Y, and Z, And I feel it's the same way it should go for women.
I rock with you on that, and it doesn't mean necessarily that pointing the finger, but how can I contribute to this in a better way? So I appreciate that. But I now see, I don't want you to skate around the answer. I'm asking for specifics. Like, do you have, and if you're just like, no, Cameo, different folks, different strokes for different folks, but is there an area that you see that women can do a better job in? And I'm allowing this space, one, because I trust you and you have done a really good job of setting the stage and even having conversations with men about being accountable for their behaviors. And so I kind of want to hear a little bit, and y'all, this ain't the topic, but I just kind of want to hear a little bit from you.
No, I was getting ready to respond to that, and thank you for giving me
Oh,
that
sorry.
space and that. No, it's all good because you and I, we both are very highly opposed to generalizing. Like we text that on the side and stuff. Like I don't like to generalize at all. But to those that this apply to, is the best way I can say it. Yes, I definitely think that there are areas where women can be held accountable. One of them, I'm not going to front. I do see men do it, but I'm going to stay on topic. Elevating these out of nowhere IG YouTubers who come and they feed you this candy and telling you these things about men ain't this, these guys that look like me, talk like me, maybe more handsome, more built, whatever. And they're saying all this stuff to you about, what a real man would do and what a real man is that, and not even asking like who these guys are. Half the time they don't even believe in what they're saying. They're literally just giving you something and they're just trying to come up. And I think we have to understand that we are in a world now, Cameo, where there are a lot of people who want to work hard to not work. They just want to be known. They just want to be famous. So these people are preying on the fact that you haven't healed right. They're hearing the language. They're hearing a lot of women who are angry and upset, who say men ain't no good. That category of women who probably don't want to take accountability, and they're preying on you. And they're giving you all these simple, easy, candy, digestible, bullshits, if I can say that, so that you can feel better about yourself instead of it being any kind of accountability on your end at all. Something real easy. They'll just like, a real man, a godly man. And they use these words, these phrases that's been conditioned in us within the Black community, especially when it comes to religion. And they use those things to draw you in. And none of those things actually have no grace, no understanding, no space where you can look at yourself and try to think about, well, what did I do in that instant? And I'm being real honest with you, Cam. It is hard for me to go on and on about women because I feel like the spectrum itself and how we all respond, men and women, especially in the Black community, has all been under the umbrella of like a patriarchal white societal conditioning that we've all been victims of. So anything that I can point out that women should, be doing and be more accountable for, I can say that for men. But I will stick with that and saying who y'all elevating, that come out of these people that's be coming out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden they become the voice, and it's like, but who are you? And I think there should be more accountability on that.
I thank you for sharing, and I really do appreciate that, because I think that's an ill of the society we live in right now, that there are these simple phrases and solutions to, and I have solutions in quotes, to any and everything, but there's no nuance, there's no gray, there's no grace, there is nothing. And it just sounds easy and it sounds simple and it simplifies an individual. And that's harming, I really think that's harming relationships, because you really don't get to understand or allow humanity, in a sense. It's like, if you don't fit into this box, if you don't do these things, if you aren't this person, then I'm going to write you off for this area in my life. And so I do appreciate you highlighting that.
Yeah, and if they, when it comes to that, this idea of what a man can be, understanding that women can be agents for patriarchy also too. In that sense, just like people can be agents for racism. And so when you are elevating these voices that come out of nowhere, and then you charge every single man that you meet with not being this ideal man, and you're generalizing, you're practicing some of the same things that's been done to you. And that's not getting us
Yeah.
anywhere.
I don't think we talk about that enough either as women, how we can be agents of patriarchy. We can be internally oppressed, and then we can express that to as our ideals and our faith in our relationships. And so knowing what tools and knowing how to say, almost pause and ask ourselves, where is this thought process coming from? Who does it really benefit? Do I really feel free? Do I feel like my full self? I think is a part of that change. And then I'll hop into why we really got on here. So thank you for that. Thank you for that commentary.
You're welcome for that commentary.
So let's hop into this tweet that I saw. And I was like, ooh, is what I said when I saw the tweet. So this was actually last year in November. Jay Ha tweeted, you said, most men say they desire peace in a relationship, when in reality, they're really demanding order. I'm gonna say it again for the people in the back. Because if you heard it like I heard it, you was like, oh. So on November 22nd, 2022, Jay Hall said, he tweeted, most men say they desire peace in a relationship, when in reality, they're really demanding order. Did you mean everything that I think you meant in that tweet?
What do you think I meant? And you can say knowing me now for a minute. So go ahead. Tell me what you think I meant.
Thank you. I think there's this conversation because I don't want to assume some things. And it's a lot to fit into so many characters, right? And to get someone's attention. But I think there's this conversation, this larger conversation about men desiring peace in a relationship. I think a part of that conversation potentially came from a good place, potentially. But I think as it evolved and it picked up some momentum, I think it turned into something else. And I think it turned into this idea of men saying, you have to do what I say, or I desire you to do what I say without any pushback. And I want things in my home or in my relationship to happen a certain way. And I want you to just fold into that. So it's order and this idea of almost like a job, right? You just do what I say. I'm the boss. And because I know what's best, our house, this relationship, this institution that we're building will produce peace. That's how I understood that tweet.
Well, so it came from a personal place, and it didn't necessarily come from me witnessing relationship between man and woman. It came from a conversation I had with my cousin, and him and I, we had fell out for a few years, and then we ran into each other finally after a few years, and what we fell out over was extremely dumb, but right after our fallout, the pandemic kicked in. So, you had that, and then we were all in our homes, et cetera, life goes on. So me and my cousin, we ran into each other again, and we bumped into each other. And as we're getting ready to talk, I can feel like, I can feel the wall, that he had up. Like after we both was kind of saying, well, how you been? And how's your mama? And how's your mom? I'm like, okay, well, I guess it got to be me. So I just came out and I told him, I said, hey, listen, man, we don't have to get into it right now because we ran into each other. But I just want to let you know that, I love and I miss you. We can have that conversation later, but just know that you're missed. And I can tell that he kind of was ready for something that wasn't that. And as he was talking to me, he was just like, well, a little bit of what we had fallen out about was starting to come out. And one of the things that he had said was when he was reading my text, and by the way, in the history of the world, text debates are never good because people be reading it and they hear it in their head a certain type of way, and it just never goes right. There are certain conversations, pick up the phone and just call, okay? Or wait till you see that person. And me and my cousin are those people. And so he was saying, as he was reading my text, his expression was, well, I had to make a decision for my peace. And I was like, for my peace. And to be honest with you, he's never been the kind of guy to like have those kind of conversations. You know, the conversations of like peace and balance and like that's not who he's been. And so I'm like, knowing what we fell out about, because our falling out was pretty much a miscommunication and it was a respect thing. I said to myself, knowing him, I was like, yo, this is about order. You know, like this is not about peace. You got upset with me because I was messing up your order. And I started thinking about the history of what peace is. In a sense, if you think about the major changes we've had in our culture, it came when people wanted to disrespect the peace. They had to disrupt something. And a lot of times in the system always wanted its order. If the Negroes were okay with not voting, everything is flowing. But if a Negro came down from the North and wanted to protest and say, well, we should be able to vote, you disrupted our Negroes down here. And it became some of that. And then I started hearing that a lot more to what you said, some of my mans, and then when they talk about the relationships that they want, when they talk about who they was dealing with. And, you know, I started seeing a lot of the memes that was going around, be his peace, girl, be his peace. And I'm like, well, technically you can't look for no individual to give you peace. You got to have that within yourself. Everybody else that you meet is an added bonus. And I started to have this understanding like, yo, a lot of men in their relationship, when I think about the men who raised me and the men I came about and some of the language of men I'm around, a lot of it is about order. They want things to run in a particular order. That is their version of peace. If you really ask them what their peace is, they want things to be flowing to their liking. But truth be told, you have to disrupt things in order for progress. I don't know a stage in culture and history where there was progress made in a peaceful manner in an orderly fashion. So when I hear these men say it and it's coming from men to what you say, it become like a popular trend. And it's coming from people who don't even speak that language. They're using that word to really necessarily say they really just want you to do what they say. They really just want order. And they want that not necessarily just from their girls. They want it from everybody in their life. They want it from their friends, their cousins, their best men. They want everybody to run in a order to their liking. They want everybody to, in some way, service them. When they work 8, 9, 10, 12 hours, they go to the bar, they have a happy hour, they want their man to give them laughs and to cheer them up. Then they come home and they want their house to quote unquote be in order. All of those things are a service to them. And that is their version of peace. So that was my long-winded way of saying how I came to that conclusion and fit it within those small characters of a tweet. But it was also other things I had wrote about also too. But that was the origin of it.
So I want to highlight something, just how something can definitely be taken out of context, right? I was like, oh, this one of those gender conversations, and it clearly wasn't. I understand how who we are doesn't happen in a silo. How you show up with your platonic relationships is oftentimes how you show up. I don't want to say how you show up, but who you are, your issues, character, trauma shows up in all types of relationships. It shows up in different ways. So similar to what you said, the desire for order and how some folks are masking it as peace also shows up in romantic relationships and platonic relationships as well as familial relationships. And so I love that. And I also want to somewhat expand on how we understand order and the idea of disrupting it, because with this notion and this culture of, in a sense, cutting people off, ending relationships, not engaging in things that disrupt their peace, I think it's important to understand what healthy conflict looks like. And also when your order is disrupted, how do you manage that properly? Because very much so for me, growth has happened when my order, when my normal has been disrupted. And that could look like tension in a relationship. That could look like grief. That could look like transitions. And all of those have been opportunities for growth for me. And when I think about transitions, I'm talking about job transitions, city transitions, friend transitions. Like all these things are shifting and it disrupts what our normal flow is.
And to be honest with you, that statement was gender based because what I come to the understanding is that how men who operate like that in the home with their woman, It's the same way they want to operate with their friends, with their guy friends. It's the same. It's literally the same way. It's just more of a quote unquote, the other terms being used a lot, the alpha male thing. And this is how they want things to be lined up. And so it does become that. Because I'm dominant over the woman in my house. So I'm definitely going to be dominant over the guys that I hang out with outside the house. They pour it on as far as they go. As far as they can take it, they'll take it that way. And what I see the issue with that is I don't see you taking it to that white boss that laid you off the day before Christmas with no pay. I don't see a whole bunch of no podcasts of men gathering talking about how, there's been a suicide rate amongst Black males that has increased since 2020. And how can we be better gentlemen amongst each other? I don't see that same energy being taken on IG Live rants or whatever, whenever there's another societal norm that's being pushed against us when it comes to our betterment as men, when we're getting locked up still by the dozens. I don't see that energy going there, but I do see that energy going real anti-woman. I do see that energy of like memes of be his peace and, a man works hard as if the woman didn't work hard. And here's the part that kind of relates to the question you asked earlier. There are women who play into that because I've been in relationships where a woman wanted me to be this certain type of way, this certain type of structure of a man. Not necessarily because this is what she wants in her heart. This is what she had been told a man is supposed to be, who he's supposed to be. This is what she's been told from her grandmother, her mother, or even the father that was in or out of her life. Because we don't talk about the women. They always want when a woman does something that is not liking to society. Well, she got daddy issues. But you can have a man in your life who set an example, and you're so fixed on that example that that's the type of man that you want to have as a partner. And I've had that also too. And so when I see men say that and they want that, I think about the type of man that's actually saying that. And I think about the type of man that's actually agreeing upon that. It's either a man that actually has that within their house. When you step into their house, there's like an order, everybody caters to them. Or it's a man that doesn't have that in his house. And this is what he's yearning. And he's just venting this in the digital space, which is the majority that I feel. I got no math to back this up, but a lot of the men that's out there shooting that out there, they are probably men that wish that they can be dominant in some fabric of their life. And so it does play into that gender role of that. And it can be like that even amongst guys.
Where do you think that comes from? The desire to dominate?
There's so many areas in Black men where they're always being told that they lost in something. So they have to find something that they win in. And the white male is the one that's always been highlighted as a success story. So in some form of fashion, over the years, we looked at that and we tried to emulate that. And because we tried to emulate that, we failed to recognize that this come from and what we wanted to do, that type of man who has that type of thinking, we wanted to replace white oppression with Black oppression. Well, don't listen to the white man, listen to me. As if that's supposed to be technically better. I'm doing what I want. And I think that comes from that lack of love or that lack of self-worth that you may feel eternally. You have to get it from somewhere. And so the quickest thing to do is to attach on to somebody that is quote unquote weaker than, and they try to dominate in that fashion and get it. Cause I at least got to have it in my own.
Yeah.
Let me at least have it here.
It makes me think about the structure too of the church, of how that is, or historically has been, the place where Black men dominate and they get this unchecked respect where very literally flowers are thrown at your feet. But that too is entrenched with patriarchy and oppressive to women. And something you said, but I think you answered it because what I want to say is, like, we were in the cotton fields with y'all, right? And so we had to work hard too. We were oppressed too. And I'm not trying to play oppression Olympics. I want to find the distinction between the desire for men to dominate and women not having necessarily that same desire in that way. But I think you answered it because you talked about self-worth. And so I think there are more tools at our disposal, and we are, and I say we, I'm talking about women, are allowed to express and unpack our emotions and have historically been able to do that more so than men. And that their existence hasn't been called into question when they do that. So if a man were to unpack his emotions, if a man were to talk about self-worth, esteem, his existence, his masculinity would be questioned. And he would be othered, he would be outcast, he wouldn't have a community, all these things that we need very much when it comes to self-actualization, when it comes to building your self-worth. So that was one thing I thought about. And then I also thought about patriarchy, what we kind of started the conversation with. What does society tell men that they need to be in order to be whomever's definition of successful? And I think it is a part of that dominating. It isn't necessarily a part of that loving yourself or loving deeply your partner. And what does loving look like? It doesn't look like dominating. It looks like caring, and looks like protecting, and looks like creating a safe space. So I was thinking about the comparison of the Black woman and the Black man, in a sense, along this same path, but somehow it shifted for Black men. And not to say Black women don't have their struggles, but we went in a different direction.
Yeah, the struggles are just different. So on the opposite end, on the other end, when it comes to men dominating, well, the world has been ruled and dominated by men in general, right? So if I'm a male, whether I'm an enslaved male or not, I still see that. I'm still conditioned by that. And even if I'm quote unquote so-called free, they're still operating in that. I mean, I can't tell you the examples that sometimes when I've had friends, men, respectable men, intelligent men, who will point to somebody white who achieved something and will say, well, you see, that's how they do it. And I'm like, well, okay, but you're acting like we all had the same start at the same time, and we didn't. They had a 400-year head start, right? And are you saying that's how we need to operate? But that's what it's told. That's what's told success is. So yeah, it's not that women don't probably feel that way when it comes to dominating or whatever, but the pressure, you could argue, was not thrusted upon them as heavy it was upon me, just like with other attributes that a woman is being thrust upon her when it comes to those things. And men are always, especially Black men in particular, we're always trying to find a sense of identity in America, especially if you want from 1619 heritage. You're trying to find a sense of identity. So all of these tropes, these theories, these ideologies that celebrate the masculine man, you're going to attach yourself to.
What's the solution? Is my question. I think it's hard work, because when I say the solution, I'm basically talking about internal work. When people say doing the work, and I understand that it is difficult. It's the unpacking every day. It's the sitting with your emotions. It's the deciding if these tropes of masculinity are accurate, even though they're being pushed in your face, they're being celebrated, and they are winning. I'm going to say winning in quotes, because this is the person that women desire. This is the person that is at the top of the corporate ladder. This is the person. And all these are in quotes, right? Because society very much plays into this. Because Lord, I won't say society, but some folks couldn't even handle Jonathan Majors on the cover of Essence, I believe, in a pink coat with flowers. In his two last movies that are like, if he is not the epitome of a masculine man by society standards, money, popularity. He has two movies that's at the top of the box office now. Muscles, shirt off, women falling at his ankles. But he puts on a coat of flowers and he's emasculated. So I said all that. That was a long question.
No, it's cool. And I'm glad that you brought it up, and I'm going to try to get to it as much as I can. Let me try to respond to the first part of what you were saying as far as the solution part. I don't try to look at things as an antidote, meaning I don't think it's like a math problem where we're going to find one solution. I think it's going to take a multitude of solutions. One of the things that come to mind is grace and understanding, because listen, I'll be a liar to tell you that it doesn't affect me too. There are some times where I feel I'm caught off guard, where I feel like I'm not worthy of manhood or whatever because of what I'm unable to provide, especially when it comes to those that I love. I hate seeing the people that I love that are really, really close to me. I hate seeing them go through something and I can't help them. You know, it feels different when I look at my bank account and I can't, you know, do something for my mom when she needs something, or when the healthcare thing was going to happen before Obama, and seeing my mom on the phone and I couldn't do necessarily anything about it, or feeling the need to want to take her to the streets to do something about it because I had to feel a worthiness of that. And I still struggle with that to this day. I struggle with that in relationships, professional relationships. It's a constant work that I have to do with myself in that, because to quote my therapist, she says, Jay, you've been taught something for 30 something some years. You ain't going to get this overnight. And she's absolutely right. So I try to deal with that also too, where I'm like, yo, this doesn't make me a man, because I get very much so exhausted that if I don't live up to this man stature that everyone has in their head, this Disney character that everyone has in their head, this whatever character that you have in your head, if I don't live up to that, then not only are we not going to make it this relationship, but I'm not even valued. That that is heavy. That is heavy on my soul. That is heavy on brothers I know who deal with that eternally and don't express that as maybe as well as I can to you. That is heavy. There are a lot of men out there that are hurting. Hence why they gravitate in the same way, these random ass internet voices that champion the BS that they have, because there are a lot of men that are hurting that don't know how to heal. We don't know how to say amongst each other, let's heal together. Like, our friendship is worthy. No, it's, oh, you have a wife now. I don't need to tend to my brotherhood as much as I did, but you tend to your brotherhood when your wife situation ain't right. So what we talking about here, right? And as far as, you know, when we talking about the Jonathan Majors, you're right. Listen, I was somebody that I first saw Jonathan Majors on this 2-part movie series called When We Rise, and he was playing this black gay activist, and he was playing the young version of him, and Michael K. Williams was playing the older version of the person. And I just thought like, yo, this dude's a dope actor. You know, I just off top. Then he's in Lovecraft Country, and then I started watching him like everybody else watching him. And as his roles increase, it don't get no more masculine than how he's been going in his journey, right? Like, you can't even say he's about to do something feminine in his roles now, right? You might have that argument like, oh, it's an agenda. He's about to play gay in his next movie. But he started off playing gay first, and every film has been more masculine and dominant. I don't know how more dominant you can become than playing a boxer and actually working out for the part. His another movie that's getting ready to come out called Magazine Dreams, he's playing a bodybuilder. Like, what are we talking about here, right? Because the brother put on a pink coat and sat with his legs crossed on top of the couch. You know how much I used to sit on top of the couch that my grandma used to be like, get your ass down? When I was on Howard campus, I used to sit on top of the bench on some genius. That's how we used to clock work back home. You know, you sit on top so you can hop off anytime. I mean, there is a language there when I saw that with that brother. And people are ignoring that or choosing to go in the other direction, like, oh, it's this agenda. And I can get into the whole spiel of why something feminine got to be considered weak, because I think that needs to be challenged too, because there is an attitude of, okay, so what? It is looking feminine. What does that mean? So being feminine weak, you can't lead, you can't do what? What does this mean? And I've been saying this time and time again, I do not understand how us as Black men be raised by Black mothers, Black sisters, Black aunties, and then we get older and we betray them. It's almost like all that work that they done leading us when we were younger, all of a sudden now you can't lead now. Now that I'm grown and I don't need you to wipe my bottom no more, guess what, Mom? You're not capable of leading, although you was leading for the past 19-something years. It's like, what are we talking about here? Because we got the evidence right there. Like, Cameo, the evidence is right there. This ain't no theory. This ain't something we gotta go read a bunch of books about. If I wasn't raised in a single Black home by my mother, you know somebody who was, or somebody next to that, we've seen the proof in the pudding. It hasn't always been perfect. No, but it's there. To sit back and say, oh, they're trying to emasculate. But again, nobody wants to talk about these government systems that was put in place where a woman could not get welfare or government assistance if she had a man in the home. No one wants to talk about that. You don't want to make an argument about during the Reagan era of what they were doing to our home. Like, this was documented. This was laws. But your argument is a brother sitting on the couch looking fly as hell because he had a pink coat on and he worked for them abs. Come on, son. What are we talking about here? Like, I really sometimes I have to calm down and I have to log off because when I see it, and this is probably why I'm not a part of a certain group me Texas no more anyway. It's not that I'm trying to go so hard, you know. And I'm actually my voice. I want to help brothers. Like I really like, yo, brothers, we gotta do better. Like I want us to do better. It's not so much about pandering and this and this. I'm like, yo, brothers, I want us to grow better. But if we at a point where we're getting upset at a guy looking fly as hell on a couch on Ebony magazine, looking dapper, women wanting him, he out here walking the talk, owning it, playing a boxer. Yo, if we can't champion that, the work that him and Michael B. Jordan did, where they came out with a #1 movie, 2 black male leads, with Tessa Thompson right there, like an all-black cast, made $100 million in a weekend. These movies that we love back in the day, Cam, that The Best Man and all of them, you go back and you look, they didn't make money. They became cultural classics. Like they didn't necessarily make the money, right? Creed made the money. Yo, we should be out here celebrating the relationship with Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan, Jonathan Majors. We should be celebrating a new era because Denzel and Larry Fishburne was only going to take us so far. We should be celebrating this brotherhood and these relationships. Instead, we're looking at these things and we're like, here's the agenda. And they're trying to take us away from home. No, Negro, they had laws for that were white and black and white, written in ink of them trying to take away our homes. Your son putting on a dress because he's curious is not trying to take away your home. Like it's not. And I just do not understand it. I wish there was an absolute answer to it, but I do feel like our relationships have to be better amongst each other as men. Even as I champion our relationships got to be better with women, but man, we got to do a better job amongst ourselves.
That was a lot.
I'm sorry.
That was a lot. No, but it was spot on. I'm just like, keep going. I ain't gonna interrupt. Keep going. But it was spot on, and I think it's something that we need to hear. We need to hear more of, and it's the practicality of it, right? It's not this pie in the sky. This is very tangible, real information. It's not just a perspective. Like it's factual. And even the comparison across generations, you know, like you said, Denzel and Lawrence, like they could only, like the baton has been passed and they are carrying it well and great and tag teaming it. And we are in a different space. We are evolving as people. And I think about, it's almost like we have blinders on when we look at certain people. Because I thought about Michael B. Jordan and the fact that he lost, mind you, I don't know much about Michael. Like, I don't know. I'm from the outside looking in. But him and Chadwick, I'm assuming they had a great relationship, right? I'm assuming they were brothers. Like, he lost him. He lost him. He's probably still grieving. And the fact that he can have another Black man support him and show up for him and love on him, not only through one of his most recent greatest feats, but celebrate him publicly as well. And we're mad. We're upset. We're upset. We're upset. And I think it comes back to something you mentioned when you talked about identity. And my heart shifted a little bit because I almost felt the pain, right? When we talk about characteristics that identify masculinity. And one of them, which is huge, is provision, right? You are a provider. You provide and you protect. That is something that I think men plant their flag in. If I can't do this, and I'm not doing my job. I'm not being a man. My brother and I, you know, we kind of got into it just about how, like, our dynamics. And I talked to my cousin about it, my male cousin about it. And then we kind of got into it too a little bit. But it was this idea of, we have always been taught to protect you. If I'm not protecting you, then I'm not doing my job as your older cousin or just as the male cousin. if I'm not protecting you, and that's something that your brother isn't going to let go of. And so it's essentially nothing you can do about that. And I liken that to identity, and I liken that to this idea of providing and provision. And that those are the two things that if I'm not doing this, in a sense, I'm lost. Who am I? And the walk back to worth, the walk back to esteem, when you can't do those two things, I cannot begin to fathom what that is like for a man. Because I know, J Hall, I know women project that. Like, I know we say to our men, you need to provide. If you are not providing, you are not the man that I desire. If you are not protecting, you are not the man that I desire. Not giving space for those nuances. And I feel like I hear people listen, no, Cameo, that's what they're supposed to do. That's what, and I think there is space for it, but there needs to be, that shouldn't be center to someone's identity, right? When I think about who I am as a woman, it's not what I can do for others. It's who I am. It's my character. It's how I treat people. I just wanted to highlight that I heard that. And I think there needs to be a conversation that we need to have. And we very much need to get away from defining men by what they can do for others and what they provide for the world. Because in the event that they can't do that anymore, does that make them less of a man? And I think the world does say, yes, it does. That you aren't worthy to be loved, that you aren't worthy to exist.
It does. And to relate to you and I, we both come from Detroit, blue collar town. Majority of the people, especially in the area, if you come up in a particular area, you either worked at the plant or you worked the corner. And my perspective, the origin of my perspective would always come from growing up in a broke environment where everybody was broke. And so I grew up in an area where we never had everything. So I always had to go down to Miss Johnson's house and get the sugar. Miss Johnson always knocked on the door and needed to borrow a pot. So I came up in that type of a community. So it wasn't necessarily an emphasis on the man had to do X, Y, Z, because in a broke environment that I came from, it was whatever you can do to chip in that sense. I also saw during a wave when men were being laid off at the plant, the effects that it had on them when they were on their couches and when they felt like their identities were stripped. You worked at a place for 20 years, and now that place tells you to go stay home. And now everything that you've been known for as a man has been taken from you in this one swoop. And I seen what it did to a lot of my brothers who had fathers, and I saw their fathers turn to alcohol, turn to drinking, and because they had a lost sense of identity. And I saw how the son start having their relationship turn because now you're not respecting your father. And now you're about to go out there and you go out to go work the street corner because you like, yo, I ain't about to be him. He's a disappointment to me. And I saw how all of that played a part. All of those were seeds into my thought process to the person that I am and have been evolving into, because it has to be more than that. I've been reading Jamel Hill's book, Uphill, and she talks about how her mother raised her and always told her there's no sense of a man, and I'm paraphrasing, there's no sense of a man laying next to you with his penis wet and your rent not paid. Now, on some street hustling stuff, I get it. Yo, I came up, some of them women were my babysitters. So I totally get it, right? Even though my mom was the type, she had that pride. She wasn't about to take money from no man, regardless of what her circumstances were. But I also knew women who did take. So for the longest, I had to get myself out of the mindset that if you took money from a man, that you was like less than. I had to get that out of my head. Like I had to broaden my perspective. I had to leave home to get that. Because when I was coming up of age, I wasn't going to work on the plant and I didn't want to work the corner. So I'm like, I got an opportunity to go to Howard. I want to be more than this because I'm already feeling my value at age 21. I'm already feeling it being thrown in the corner. Like if I'm not doing this with them and if I'm not doing that with them, I'm not a man. What is that? There has to be something bigger than this. Like it has to be. And in my journey, as I went on and I learned and I try to understand, yeah, there is more, but there's always going to be a place where it's going to come back to, whether it's going to come back to you in dating, whether it's going to come back to you as simple as you at work. and the kind of pain that people feel like you should take. I mean, we just saw it with the Chris Rock special, right? There were people who was like, he should be over it already, regardless if you think the special was funny or not. But overall, out of the criticism, you had people who were wanting to watch, to hate watch, to say, yo, he should be over that already. Come on. Well, Michael B. Jordan said to L'Oreal, oh, the corny dude, right? There was a lot of, he should be over it. He should be over it. And it's like, yo, but if that affected him, he wasn't nasty. He didn't go off. But if that affected him, we've been telling, women who have delayed reactions, we've been trying to have that conversation a lot, right? Like, yo, you can't tell a woman when she can speak up about it. So what, she can speak about it when it actually happened, this and this and this. I'm sorry, but bullying is a real thing. Somebody teasing you is a real thing. If that stuck with you, you might be in therapy. But even telling somebody they need to go get therapy, even that's a dismissive gesture, because you're like, yo, go handle that somewhere. Instead of you allowing the room and exploring that in that and being like, yo, that obviously affected him. Right? But there's this attitude among especially Black men that you should be able to take it. You should take that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you shouldn't. No, you should be over that already. You should be over that. Or you had it coming to you. And you're not going to get the men that you want to evolve if everyone keeps championing that type of attitude.
I really like the fact that you highlighted sometimes we can be dismissive, especially towards men, and how it transitioned into this is a communal thing, right? The healing didn't happen. I mean, the hurt didn't happen with him just by himself. It happened because someone said something or did something, and most likely nobody else from that community addressed it or gave them space to address the fact that that was hurtful and that was harmful. Even as we move forward and we think about what we started with, right? Being accountable for the people we love, especially in the space we're in. So I think this conversation I'm gonna be honest with you, this is not what I expected from this conversation, but it was everything that we needed. It was everything that we needed. It was everything that we needed to really begin to transition the conversation, to begin to transition the movement that's happening, I think, amongst Black folks, to be more intentional, more, because it's folks, like, I'm not dismissing the movements that have already happened, but I think there definitely is a pricking and a prodding for us to move forward and to question our actions when we engage with one another in community. Like, why did you treat her like that? Why did you treat him like that? Who did not speak up? Who did not have your back in some of these spaces? And so always a pleasure to have you on the Good Girl podcast. So thank you for your transparency. Thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability.
Well, thank you very much for having that space for it. I got to give a shout out to not only my therapist, but I do work with nonprofit organization in DC area, starting with today. And the founder, Charlotte Anderson, once a month has what's called the Barbershop Talks. And she has a licensed therapist named Tariq Amari, who navigates the conversation. And we're in the heart of the barbershop once a month in Southeast Washington, DC, having these tough, challenging conversations, and the barbershop, the Black church, and maybe the home, definitely at a bar, are one of those few spaces that Black men have felt safe to be able to behave in a certain way. The barbershop is the voice. And so when you have spaces like that, it's not going to solve it overnight, but it can begin a dialogue or a conversation of that. And as hard as it is, I would like for us to all not carry what we had yesterday into today. Like, if I'm dating Cameo, like, she's not the last 3 ex-girlfriends I was with. Like, she's not. Her bag is her bag. And I need to address her as her bag. And I would like for you to address me as my bag. But unfortunately, we're not. We're all carrying it. So it used to be a time where my good homegirl would come tell me about a fuckboy. And I'd be like, damn, that sucks for you. Now, if my homegirl tell me about a fuckboy, I'm like, damn, that sucks for you and me. Because I get it now. I get that if you haven't healed and you met me, my language sounds the same. My movements are the same. My mannerisms are the same. I kiss the same. So how are you able to display the difference? And it's the same way with a lot of brothers out there. How am I going to be able to trust you when the last little time I show a little bit of vulnerability, this woman stabbed me on that situation? So why would I show vulnerability towards you? And so I would like for all of us to continue to challenge like exactly what that looked like, because vulnerability doesn't have to mean you're bawling in a corner. It's revealing something that you wouldn't normally feel safe revealing in that moment, or being a certain part of yourself that you wouldn't normally feel safe. So we got to get out this mind frame of looking at it like, oh, it has to look like a particular thing. It can't, vulnerability looks like this. No, we have to open our minds up and say, yo, it might look like something I've never seen before. But this might be a moment that I'm experiencing right now where someone is being vulnerable with me. So how do I handle that? Because obviously this person is feeling they're either exhausted. There's only two reasons why you're vulnerable in that moment. You're either exhausted and your defenses are low, or you trust the space that you're in. And I would like for us to get more into a place of having places that we trust to be in and not in exhaustion, because we see what happens when someone is just at their limit and they break. It can go in any direction. And we need less breaking and more trust for us to be in those spaces.
And I too want to challenge as an individual what that looks like too, because I think everyone has difficulty trusting or finding a space to be vulnerable with. And a friend of mine says, I think, Cameo, you're afraid to trust yourself in these spaces. You're afraid that you're not going to make a good decision, that your discernment isn't high. So the person could still provide a safe space. They could still provide all the things that are necessary. But there also comes a time when I have to trust myself again, because there is an accountability component too, right? What things made you trust this person? What red flags did you not pay attention to? What trauma were you looking for them to heal instead of doing the work for yourself? Or what were they providing in the relationship and you were ignoring the other places? And so I think an additional component to that is also learning to trust yourself again and understanding that I too am a different person. While, someone I'm in a relationship with or someone I'm dating isn't the past 5 guys I've dated, but I'm a new person too. And so allowing that new person to experience something new and knowing that that person is wiser, if you've done the work, knowing that the person is wiser, smarter, more discerning, and that there will be something new for you to learn in this relationship. And so I think that's another component too, because that when she told me that, I said, again, one of those, ooh, like I do not trust myself in this, in this space, because you hold on to dear life or whatever. No, I'm not being vulnerable. Just another component. J Hall, I think you and I could talk for days and save the world through conversation. So and so I'm going to end the conversation here, but you are always welcome back on the Good Girl Podcast. When we do an in-person podcast, maybe we'll do it in DC. I don't know. Maybe we'll be big enough to be at homecoming. Maybe, I don't know. But you're always welcome on the Good Girl Podcast.
I mean, I hope I get that invite or not. I'll definitely be in the crowd when the Good Girl Podcast does its first live. I'll definitely be in the audience, supporting. I ain't gonna front though. I'm going to want to be in that seat though, just because I just gonna want to be in that seat. But no, I appreciate you for having. Please feel free to come back on History Being Black podcast as well, because as we always say, this conversation, we need to have more of them and different branches of them. So thank you for being able to have this space for me to be able to articulate that.
All right. And you are listening to the Good Girl Podcast.